Folks, I do realize that we are in uncertain times, but I truly do not believe we would be where we're at today in America had Donald Trump not been able to stack the Supreme Court the way that he has. You have 6-3, with six of them pretty much in Donald Trump's pocket all the time. And all of this crazy madness that is Project 2025, they can absolutely now put their foot down on the accelerator and just move forward with it. So I'm not trying to go back and rub salt in wounds or anything like that, but elections do have consequences, and I really do believe that these are the biggest consequences that I've ever seen in my lifetime come from a presidency. I don't really think that Donald Trump, in his first term, uh, accomplished enough to even be remembered. If he hadn't have went about it with his WWE style of theater, if he hadn't have went about it the way that he did, and had just been voted out and went on home and never had a January 6th or never had none of the moments that he had after that, I don't think he would have had a very memorable president at all. But him stacking the Supreme Court has done so much to just strip away human rights. I mean, for the first time in American history, a president is now on a human rights watch group. He's on their list now. It's just absolutely crazy that we're here. But I'm going to read you a couple of articles here from Midas News about a couple of Supreme Court decisions that have happened in the last couple of days. And again, they're absolutely putting their foot down on the accelerator for Project 2025, and it's pretty damn terrifying. And no, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I do appreciate everyone for your support here on the channel. We're cruising toward 800,000 subscribers, and I do believe we can get to 1 million before the year's over. So I hope we get there, and thank you all so much for your support. I say I hope we get there because sometimes I wonder if we're even going to be here in general. It's so crazy how much has happened in the last little while. But let's bring up this story right here. So the Supreme Court ruling allows states to block Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. Now this one here was written by Troy Matthews. The right-wing court just allowed states to cut off preventative health care for women without insurance. Here's the story, folks. In a 6-3 ruling, and a lot of these stories start off the same way. In a 6-3 ruling along ideological lines, the United States Supreme Court has ruled that states may block Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid, funding for contraception, and preventative treatments like cancer screenings. Now, Planned Parenthood is already prohibited from receiving federal funding for abortions, but the majority of services the nonprofit provides are not abortions, but rather low-cost preventative health care for women without private insurance, funded largely by Medicaid. Now, Donald Trump's budget bill currently in the Senate also cuts Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood, which would result in the closure of up to 200 centers, according to the estimates from the nonprofit, including states where abortion is legal. The conservative justices led a written opinion by the Trump-appointed Neil Gorsuch, sided with the state of South Carolina in a lawsuit filed by a patient who sought to block the state's order to cut off her Medicaid reimbursements for services at Planned Parenthood. Although Medicaid law allows patients to choose their provider, the justices rule that patients do not have a right to sue over enforcement of that provision. Deciding whether to permit private enforcement poses delicate policy questions involving competing costs and benefits, decisions for elected representatives, not judges, Gorsuch wrote. The ruling comes the day after the third anniversary of the Dobbs versus Jackson decision, which overturned Roe versus Wade, allowing the states for the first time in 50 years to completely ban abortion. To reiterate, Medicaid funding already cannot be spent on abortions. This ruling has absolutely nothing to do with funding abortions at Planned Parenthood. Republicans, through this ruling and Trump's budget bill, are attempting to kill low-cost preventative health care, including cancer screenings, for women who don't have private insurance. And so, folks, this truly is a very disturbing story because of all the lives that it's going to affect. And that's why that I've said so many times, I truly do believe that Donald Trump stacking the Supreme Court the way that he did has had more of an effect on this country and people's lives than pretty much anything that we've seen. I want to go here real quick, though, and read you another disturbing headline. You can find this one also over on Midas News. Let me bring this one up because a lot of this stuff is straight up unconstitutional, but folks, they're going to make their decision based on their, ideological viewpoints, and then we're just going to be stuck with this shit. And it truly is depressing and sad that we're here. But here is the next one. Let me get that ad out of our way here. Um, this one was written by Aaron Parnas. The Supreme Court clears the path for Trump administration to advance birthright citizenship proposal. The ruling narrows scope of injunction, allowing controversial policy to proceed in most states despite legal challenges. So, in a significant decision on Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court permitted the Trump administration to move forward with its controversial plan to curtail automatic birthright citizenship, a policy shift that could have a major implication for immigration and constitutional rights. The court did not weigh in on the legality of the proposal itself. Instead, it addressed a procedure question: whether lower court justices had the authority to impose nationwide injunctions that halted the administration's efforts across the entire country. By granting the Trump administration's request to narrow these injunctions, the justices have allowed the policy to proceed in states that did not directly challenge its court. As a result, the administration can now advance preparations to implement the proposal in most states, though it remains blocked in New Hampshire due to separate ongoing legal battle. The decision emphasizes that the legal fight is far from over. Plaintiffs can still file new lawsuits, and existing challengers may seek narrower injunctions in the future. While this ruling allows the Trump administration to continue working to carry out the policy administratively, it does not remove judicial oversight. Critics argue the decision weakens the vital judicial check on executive power, especially when it comes to the issues of national scope. The proposal, originally unveiled an executive order, seeks to end the long-withstanding interpretation of the 14th Amendment that grants U.S. citizenship to nearly everyone born on the soil. Now, the amendment reads, all persons, notice how it said that, not citizens, all persons, born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof and are citizens of the United States. Now, legal scholars have widely argued that this clause confers birthright citizenship to nearly all U.S.-born individuals, with rare exceptions such as children of foreign diplomats. Donald Trump and his allies in the MAGA movement have long criticized what they consider to be judicial overreach, particularly the use of nationwide injunctions that have repeatedly stalled aspects of his policy agenda. However, such injunctions are not new and have not been used under previous administrations, both Republican and Democratic. This Supreme Court decision may mark a turning point in how far-reaching court orders can be, especially in politically sensitive cases. For now, though, the question of whether Trump administration's birthright citizenship proposal is constitutional remains unsolved and likely destined for further legal scrutiny. And then you got to say to yourself, okay, when these things gets kicked back to the Supreme Court, what's going to happen? And again, I'm not trying to go back and say I told you so, but this is one of those reasons leading into 2016 that I said, you know what, we really got to line up whether we want to or not and get behind Hillary Clinton, because if we don't, we're going to end up with a Supreme Court, and we're going to end up with a radical Supreme Court, and that's exactly what we have. And this same Supreme Court that are making these decisions are the same ones that gave Donald Trump immunity. So it's going to be very interesting going forward to see how these things play out when they gave him immunity and he violates the law and looks back at them and says, but you gave me immunity. You gave me permission to do so. You took down the guardrails. You can't call me out on this. So I don't know how we go forward. I don't know how we ever put the toothpaste back in the tube. I don't know if it can be done in this scenario. It feels like at this point we just have to sit back and let all these things happen and hope that there's some safety net somewhere that can save a few people. But this is going to make life a whole lot harder on women, a whole lot harder on people coming to this country, trying to find a better way for themselves. Folks, this is not the America that I ever thought we would be living in 2025. It sure as hell isn't the America that I grew up in and thought I was growing up in, at least. I really always looked at us that we were the land of opportunity where we welcome people to come and make a better way for themselves. And I thought we were making progress. I thought women in 2025 would be freer than ever, but instead we've went back in time. When they say make America great again, the key word there is again. They want to take it back to the 1950s, back farther than that. They want to go back even further to a time when white men ruled the day, women said nothing, and no one else had a say in anything but rich white dudes. That's where they're headed with this. And now they've got their foot down on the accelerator. And all we can do is just sit back and hope for the best. And I truly don't have all the answers. I got to be honest with you. Sometimes I read these stories, I'll make the video, I'll put it out, I'll walk away and I'll say, dang, I should have said that or I should have thought about that, because It's literally so hard to wrap your mind around. That's why that I just keep moving from video to video, and I figure whatever I didn't cover in the last one, it'll come back around because it just keeps getting crazier by the minute. But we have to keep putting in the work. We have to keep talking about the issues at hand. We have to keep protesting, speaking out, and standing up against the madness, and hope that we make it. That's really all that I know to say.